Welcome to a non-tutorial. I asked you guys this week if you'd be interested in like behind the scenes videos kind of explaining the process of making one, and you guys seem pretty interested, so I'm gonna do one, and if you guys don't like this, we don't have to keep doing them, but I'm just happy to kind of show my process in order to help others. So what I really want to do is highlight the difference in the versions of this video I made. This is EarthBound Overrated, and this had 3 different cuts to it, so I'm going to show you how they differed from one another. The first difference is in the very first second, because this shot was completely different in the first version. Most of the huge changes actually happen in the first, like, 30 seconds of the video. If you want to see what the final video turned out like, there's a link in the description to watch it, but let me show you the original version. Alright, so I'm going to show you the beginning of the first cut of this video and how it changed. So this is how it began. Goodness, that's still a little loud. So as you can see, the beginning was different because it was really just like a ton of footage of Earthbound. And it just didn't really visually demonstrate what I was talking about. And I thought it was just kind of like a lazy way to open the video. That's why I ultimately ended cutting it. I also added like all this context about Earthbound's legacy and how it had changed and reshaped over the years. So there's all these clips that you don't even see. I just realized that my introduction was kind of going on too long, and I was giving context that wasn't really necessary to the overarching point of the video, and not to mention with stuff like people already knew. So I just decided to get rid of it, and like this is where, so like this is like, how far is this? So this was originally 46 seconds into the video. In the final version, this clip starts at 32 seconds, as you can see here. But I really ended up liking what I did here, instead using
super overrated,
this.
and it really
I
just
actually
doesn't
recorded
have any
this
good
on a green
qualities,
screen in Photoshop by
right?
putting a green
Well, that
background
can't
on it.
be.
Let me find that clip actually. So as you can see, I just like grabbed this from the internet and threw this in here, got like a nice quality one, put on the green screen, and then I just used a screen recorder to do it, and then I cropped it so that it was just this, chroma keyed that out, and then
EarthBound is super
voila, I had the
overrated, and it
effect
really
by
just
just
doesn't
putting
have
it
any good
over a video
qualities,
of Earthbound in the
right?
background. I just kind of
Well,
wanted
that
the beginning of the video to better convey the idea of the video right away, because it felt a little unfocused with just a bunch of clips.
can't be. We
And I
hear these
decided to use
opinions
more footage
all the
from
time,
Earthbound
but which one is
USA,
true,
uh,
or at
and
least more
I
true?
thought that this was a nice contrast here, because each cut should be in kind of like conversation with the previous one and the next one. So it starts out with Earthbound, because kind of establishes this is kind of, that this is kind of like a legacy video. Then the next cut is all of these, is this like set of clips showing the game back when it was like really just like a cult hit. Then the next clip is showing it at Nintendo World Championships, oh gosh, this was 9 years ago, when it was being shown in front of this ginormous crowd. So that was kind of the thinking there. I also ended up adding these clips, and I used a lot of AVGN clips, and I'm really, I feel like they worked really well in conversation, because this is also like, AVGN, a bunch of the episodes are turning like 20 years old this year. So having like older James here, well, that's a weird way of putting it, younger James here than older James here, I feel like also helps maintain the theme of like legacy that is sown throughout the video. But yeah, that was like 17 seconds probably taken out of the intro, and I think the video flows much better because of that. I also
I
added
think it'd
in
be
these
helpful to
shots
look at
from a
these comment
video
points and see
that
if it
like
all
tells
adds
you how
up.
to
And these are just going to be
tell a
some broad
fake
stroke
part
ones. We're
from a
not going to
real
get into
part of
every
Earthbound
single
apart.
thing that comes.
And I ended up adding this in to better demonstrate my point regarding when I'm introducing a topic of comparing it and trying to break down whether it is overrated or not, into this theme of like, there's a real Earthbound, there's a fake Earthbound. Is the fake one in our minds, or are they both real Earthbounds? A lot of thinking for a shot that nobody cares about. Oh, so this was like one of the bigger changes between the different versions, because like I said, there were 3 cuts of this, and all the way up until the last version, a bunch of clips were stretched out more, and by that I mean right here, yeah. As you can see in this initial version, it was like literally much more horizontal than in the final version. I ended up resizing it so that it would look more like the real thing. But that was saying that was happening with like a ton of the clips in these videos. I put in gaming in the Clinton years. This is the clip I initially thought of that I wasn't necessarily going to use. But one of the people the script was given to like give notes on was Mello, and he suggested I put this in. So I was like, why not? As you can see, the Mega Man X clips were also like much wider for some reason, just because of like where I sourced the footage from. I don't know. I thought it looked just kind of weird, and it was like a bit jarring with how we would have this footage of Earthbound that looks nice and like I don't know if you want to say realistic, but I feel like you get what I'm saying at that. Juxtaposed with like Mega Man footage from the same system that looks more like that's like looks like this. Like it just didn't feel right. So I did end up finally just going through and having one watch through where all I did was make sure all those things looked consistent. Here, just having them next to each other, you can see the difference here. And like I said before, I added these clips in late, so like this also wasn't in that initial cut. In fact, let me see what was in there. Yeah, see, I was just like cutting between like a bunch of like Earthbound footage, and even if it was like it kind of visually represented the point, I found it like a lot less interesting than having something that like really visually demonstrates the point in a much more explicit way, so it feels more intentional. Because even if like when you're cutting things together like this, it's intentional and like that's how it's supposed to look and how you wanted it to look, that's not necessarily conveyed to the audience. And even if you didn't mean it to, obviously it can come across as like, oh, it looks like lazy, it looks like they just put like a clip in, or rather they just kind of dropped something random in just to fill the space. But I try to be intentional about what I use. This was one of my favorite cuts because I cut to this one when I say the word overrated is like a nebulous term, and I tried to do that very intentionally to express how Gygas himself is like very weird and nebulous because you can't quite pin down what he is. This Marge Simpson clip was like in from the very get-go. I wrote in the script to use this Killjoy clip. Let me see something really quick. I want to know if I changed it or not. Okay, no, it ends there. Initially, in like an initial cut, I was gonna have this clip like run longer and go through have these women acting in it, and then like right before it cuts back to Marge, like I was gonna have to go like this because they're like, oh yeah, I agree, and then I would cut back to the video. But I just ended up finding that it was kind of repetitive and it didn't really end up mattering in the long run. I try to keep cutaways to like extended clips like pretty short just because I don't want to detract from like the main point of the video too much, and I feel like it bores people if it goes on too long. This was another visual moment I really liked using, talking about art aging, Super Nintendo, yellow Super Nintendo, because they used to yellow for some reason. See, the thing is, like, you're trying to visually convey what you're saying because it's a visual art form, and it comes across as lazy when you're just dropping random clips of gameplay in because the artistic expression doesn't come through as clearly as it does with something like this. And here I'm talking about like something being groundbreaking, so I tried to use the most iconic shot. Like you're trying to utilize look at that. You're trying to utilize archetypes in people's understandings of things. Like I think the most common way you refer to it is just saying literalizing your footage, literalizing the B-roll, which is like any sort of thing that's. I mean, I think people know, but B-roll is just when you have like footage playing over, a voice, narration, whatever, that you're not using the audio from, but still showing. It took me a long time to figure out what to do here to demonstrate the milk and eggs analogy, because I talk about how art doesn't spoil, but these things do because they don't age the same. And like, I initially like really just used this clip for a long let me see if I find it. So yeah, I had this clip in and I sped it up like really fast. Like this is like 3,000 speed from the actual video this is from, and I had to go on way longer than I use it in the final thing, but I ended up cutting it much shorter to better convey the point because like again they're in conversation with each other, so I cut away from this talking about how things like kind of the natural world spoil, but like art is more nebulous and it doesn't, which is why we have the cabinet. But obviously the cabinet's aged, but the game itself is the same. I won't lie, this is a shot I kind of wish I replaced. I just didn't know what else to put here, and I feel like this visualized what I was saying like well enough, but I don't know, I still look at it and go kind of like I could have done better. So yeah, I cut this much shorter than it was in like the initial versions because I just kind of realized, I don't know, I thought about using like footage of like milk spoiling time lapse too, but I just kind of was like, it's just kind of gross, like I didn't want to spend too much time in this. I just wanted to convey the point, then get to the next clip because I just didn't want to turn people off by showing them something gross for so long. So right here, there was a whole deleted scene. So after the South Park clip, initially, I had this whole spiel talking about Wheatley from Portal 2, about how his line of like how he talks, Portal 2's humor is kind of seen as like cringy millennial type humor, but that it was kind of like the pioneer of that talk on the internet and ended up kind of becoming a parody of itself because people were saying it was cringy, but it pioneered that style of humor in many ways. And this stayed in pretty late, and then I like cut it pretty late just because again I felt like it was connected, it was related, but it just detracted from the point too much because it was like it was a point that I think made sense speaking it, but was just kind of it was just kind of repetitive because it was just kind of further explaining what had already been said in these past 3 clips, and I just didn't want to waste people's time. And that's kind of what a lot of editing is like you edit through and then you're like, okay, this doesn't actually contribute, this slows things down, this was already said, this is said better somewhere else, and cutting it. This little sequence I did talking about IGN when I first initially brought them up, saying this little tangent where I'm just like,
okay,
I don't care what you think about IGN.
For a moment.
This
I
do not care what you think about IGN's I almost cut this because it goes on for, let's say, 7:54 until 8:05. So this goes on, I don't know, I guess 10 seconds isn't that long, but I did feel like it was going on for a while, and again, it was kind of like bringing the video to a halt.
Anyway.
And frankly, I just ended up keeping it because I did genuinely feel strongly about not caring about people's opinions on IGN and not really wanting to hear them. And this visual joke, by the way, I really like this. This visual joke was the idea of Michael Malfazura. And he said, show Imagine Baby's score and then stuff rated below it. It took me actually a bit of time to put this graphic together just to get all the pieces together, but I think it's a good bit. It's a tough tightrope to watch figuring out what to cut, because even like what I said right here about GTA 5, it being older than GTA 5, like I almost cut just this little bit, but I felt like it added enough personality to like justify being cut, because everything in a video theoretically should contribute to one of two things: the plot or character. It should either be moving the narrative along, or it should be accentuating the character, in which case the character's me, so showing like a little bit of humor like that, might as well keep it just because it endears you to the audience a bit more, and it makes it more enjoyable for them. This clip of Infamous Second Son was actually something I thought of really early on when I was trying to think of games that took place in modern day. Persona 5 was actually kind of an afterthought, funny enough. I feel like this is a bit of an underrated game, ironically, talking about a video dealing with things being overrated. Something I would have changed about the script, see, it's like, I released the video feeling like it turned out really good, and already I'm seeing things that I would change about it now, only like, I think I finished this video like 4 or 5 days ago, and I'm already seeing things now, of course now that it's out, not before the video came out, that I would change going forward. I feel like there's too many times in the video where I kind of like get to in like a list mode, where I'm like this, and this, and this. And I feel like that happens like 3 or 4 times in this video, and I feel like it's a bit too much. This one's kind of minor, but initially, when I'm talking about like Nintendo being established as a company, in earlier versions, this was just like this image of Miyamoto the whole time.
For a company as established as
I felt like it just
already
went on a
was by the
little bit too
mid-90s,
long, was a little too static, so I ended up looking more, and I found this one, which actually worked really well, because like it looks like it's kind of like from like a
as established as Nintendo already was by the mid-90s.
Like
its win was given in a
I could have used regular footage of Mario World here, but I felt like it was important to show a commercial to kind of bring you back to the time I was talking about of 1991-ish. The early 90s, basically.
And it's great to see
and then
that
cutting to a commercial of Mario Wonder, kind of bringing you back to the modern
even
day.
With more outlandish games that have been
I mean, because he also shows a direct comparison in how Nintendo marketed things as well, so I feel like it brought the through line of talking about Nintendo as an entity, as a company, together better. This clip where I'm talking about communication itself being an art, I was really proud of pulling this clip where he's talking very weird, obviously, and conveying something very confusing. I felt like that was, I don't mean to pat myself on the back, I felt clever for that one though. These 2 shots where I show Siskel and Ebert and then show Jay and Mike from Red Letter Media, this took me a little bit of time to figure out, because I knew I wanted to use them because they're kind of like, again, you're trying to literalize the footage, use the most archetypal elements people will understand, because these clips go by fast, so you want people to be able to understand just by looking at them for a short amount of time. I knew I wanted to use them because they're the archetypal critics in pop culture, like they're the most well-known critics. I mean, I could have used like AVGN or something, but I had already used them, so I didn't want to. So I tried to figure out who else to use. I did consider using Doug Walker, the nostalgia critic, but I felt like it would be too distracting, because people would be like, he's a funny guy. So I decided to go with Jay and Mike, not because they're the sophisticated ones, but just because like I didn't feel like it would draw as much attention away from what I was talking about, but I found that they were recognizable as well. I really like this effect I did where I made it look like the boys from South Park were watching
expectations for it.
EarthBound as like a movie or whatever. This is one of my favorite episodes of South Park, by the way, and I did straight up actually reuse this clip twice. It's the same one, but if you look closely, it's actually just played backwards just so the movement looks different, so it wouldn't look like I reused the clip, because again, that's something that'll take you out of the experience if you notice it. I really didn't want to use South Park The Stick of Truth because I felt like I'd used too much South Park clips in the video already, but I ended up using it just because like I was like, it's still a good example.
But the lasting effect
and then
of
oddity,
it
felt a little bit obvious, but like
even stronger
again, you're trying to be
removed from
archetypal,
its
so there's not
release,
necessarily
and is
anything
even
wrong with
seemingly
being
still
obvious as long as you're not doing it too often. And then Omori. Oh, I was so happy to use this clip.
Stop landing on those guys! You can space jump the whole f***ing room!
Gosh, this video is called You Can Space Jump in all caps, and it's one of my favorite videos ever, and I had been wanting to use a clip from this in a video for forever, because it feels like nobody's seen this. Like, it doesn't have a ton of views. So I was so happy to put this in here, and this is something else I came really close to cutting, because I was like, it doesn't really contribute that much to the point, and it goes on a while, but it was just so funny to me, and I had been wanting to use it for so long. I was like, you know what, no, I'm going all out, I'm putting this in, and I really am happy I did. For personal reasons. Yeah, I don't know what's up with this video for some reason, but I used like a lot of clips of South Park, but I felt like this specific scene with Stan just was very helpful in demonstrating points relating to like expressing unpopular opinions and things that people don't like. But originally I didn't have this shot here, I just had this one extended more.
But what does that make of their experience?
Here,
is their opinion void because they're now biased
but
against
like it just,
or are
you know,
they seeing things?
As much as I love this movie They Live, it's a bit slow paced. It's not a slow paced film. But it is slower than a lot of like contemporary films.
For what they
so it felt
really
like the shot went
well,
on for really long, especially at the beginning, focusing on this, which does not relate to my
opinion void because
point
they're
that
now biased
strongly.
against
Like, well,
it, or
obviously
are they
in the context
seeing things
of the
for
whole
what they
scene
really
here,
are?
where he puts it on and it changes, it does. But like, you get that.
What does that mean?
You get the comparison between this and this.
But what does
within
that
like
make
a second. But
are
you
they
can just
seeing
get it
things for
from
what
this,
they
where
really
it
are?
shows her for just a second and then it immediately changes.
What they really.
So it felt like it just went on too long when I had it here, because then it's here for too long, then it's here for too long. It just didn't beat out properly with the pacing of the rest of the video. So I had to add something else, so I put this piece here since I already had the footage and I felt like it worked to demonstrate the point. Now the differences between versions 1 and 2, because there was a second version before I got to this one, version 3, which is the final. The changes are very minimal between, because I kind of already went over most of them, because it was just like cutting more out than had already been cut out. Like this shot came in pretty late, like I think this was just footage from EarthBound. And I thought that this was just a gorgeous shot. Yeah, this definitely comes from like the video where the two are being compared. Anyway, that's kind of my editing breakdown of this video. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you guys like these kinds of like videos. And if not, don't have to do them again, but people were interested, so I thought I'd give it a shot. All right, have a good one. Bye.